right, so apparently I have the pleasure of introducing the podcast today, so I'm super excited. Welcome to everyone to another one of our episodes with A-kon Podcast. We are extremely excited to be here today. We're having a phenomenal conversation with the one and only Krystal Hicks. Krystal, thank you so much for coming and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
My long-time mentor.
So I think it's just fitting that we start kind of giving you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about who you are. Like, who is Krystal? Give us a 360 view on your life, your career, your journey, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks so much for the invite. I was so excited when I got this invitation. I've been watching AK succeed from afar, so it's been a journey. So I am currently the founder and career strategist behind a company that I started a couple years ago called Job Talk, which is an inclusive, affordable, accessible career counseling practice. And I'm based up in the seacoast of New Hampshire, but my clients are kind of scattered throughout the country. So COVID didn't affect me too much, which was really nice. I was already kind of operating remotely, fortunately. But yeah, I started my career, I graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 2007. Right, I know, go Wildcats, go Blue and White. And it was crazy though, because the recession was like on my heels. I could see it coming. I bartended and waitressed all through college. And so I actually was very fortunate to just be able to still bartend when I got out of college. Yeah, I was a journalism major. I did an internship my senior year at a daily newspaper, the Eagle Tribune, New Hampshire edition. And I realized it was a wonderful opportunity, but I probably published over 100 pieces, and I realized I never wanted to work at a daily newspaper. So I always tell my students, like, figuring out what you don't want to do is half the battle.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? That's the thing about internships.
Yeah.
You have to figure out that's what you want to do, or that's not what you want to do. So
absolutely. So that for me was a big wake-up call. So when I was graduating, and I had just lost my dad really unexpectedly my junior year. So I was actually, I had 20 years with the best father, where I feel like some people have 80 years with the worst. That's so true. There are no complaints.
She's so positive.
Yeah. So it was really cool. So I kind of took that first year out of college to like get all of those affairs straight, find my own balance, figure out what the economy was planning on doing. And I walked into a temp agency one day looking for temp work, copywriting, editing, whatever I could do, use with my degree, since I was writing those checks to my student loans every month. And they hired me internally as an admin. I didn't know what that meant. I was just thrilled that I got a job with benefits and health insurance. And I fell backwards into the employment sector. I had never heard of that. No one talked to me in college about what recruiting or human resources even was. So that was like my introduction into the whole space. And so I continued to blog. I definitely still flexed those writing muscles that I had, but I was writing about the job space and about interviewing and like why were certain candidates that weren't as experienced getting the job over more experienced candidates. Like, this is so interesting to me. Why is this happening? And so that just like the psychology behind hiring really got me. And after a couple years, I became a staffing manager. It was great. I focused on placing finance and accounting professionals at different companies. And I saw all of these recent grads coming in that had like no internships, no experience. Their resume was a hot mess. And I was like, isn't there a department at your college that does this stuff? Go use this help, right? And then I thought to myself, that's where I need to be. So I made the transition out of staffing into career services. I worked for a private college in Portsmouth called Hampshire College. It was a 4-year community college. And it was great. They had a criminal justice program. I was working with one of the local jails. I know you just lit up.
I'm excited.
We'll talk about criminal justice.
I love the topic.
And so I remember I was in one of the jails in my hometown, and a friend of mine was a corrections officer, and he was like, I'll introduce you to the, programming person. Because I was just thinking I want to get my students internships, right, there. And we started talking, and he gave me a tour of the jail. And, I'm kind of telling him, like, I'm from Dover. I might know some of the people in here. And he started laughing. And, like, 10 minutes later, somebody came out, like, Krystal Hicks? And I'm like, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm on a tour. What are you doing here? You know what I mean? Like, so it was really funny. And by the end of the day, the superintendent of programs was like, hey, listen, I just got a grant approved. Like, would you ever consider creating a jobs program? So I actually created a pre-release employment program for the men and women of the therapeutic community at Stratford County Department of Corrections. And so I did that for like 3.5 years, just in the mornings, like 1 morning a week, 2 mornings a week, and then I'd go to work at Hampshire. And it was great. They paid for my master's, Hampshire did, which was such a, and I always told my students, I was like, don't you pay for a graduate degree. Like, go get a company to pay for that for you. And then a position at UNH opened for employer relations, and that was just such a great way to get back to my alma mater and kind of continue to elevate my career and work with more majors. You know, UNH has over 200 majors, so that alone was super interesting. And after about 4 years, I was the director of career services, and one of my favorite companies that would come to campus, Lindt Chocolate, their U.S. headquarters is based in Stratham, New Hampshire.
I had a lot of that chocolate.
You got that for a long time. And every student org that I ever had close ties with when I worked at UNH, like most staff, NSBE, like all of my favorite student orgs, like they got cases of chocolate on the regular.
Notice I shouldn't name you in the list of favorite students.
You were in both of those orgs.
I was.
You were in
both
of those orgs.
I was literally leaders in both of the organizations. So
you kept the contact. Actually, I think a lot of times you were the one to call me. So
yeah. I think we've always kept contact, which is super sweet. Those chocolates were good.
And like here we are, right? So it was good.
Wow.
It was good. I was at Lindt for probably 3.5 years. I was overseeing all of their
you did hire some UNH students there, right?
Oh, I tried. I mean, we'll talk about implicit bias. Alumni bias is a real thing. I think about it afterwards. I'm like, I loved hiring Wildcats, though, to like get them in, because UNH was right in the backyard. So why wouldn't we have a strong pipeline of talent coming in there, you know? So, but it was great. You know, Lindt had sponsored some work with Most Staff, which was a student of color organization on campus, and it was just it was a great time in my career. I think financially I needed to make that move. I'm always very honest with my students and my clients about the financial impact of our career decisions. You do not work in higher ed for the money. You work in higher ed because you love it and you love your students. Yep. So when I took that job into corporate, I mean, I more than doubled my income, and I'm first gen. I was low income. I was a TRIO student, so I was on like grants coming to college and everything. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, oh my God, wait, saving money? I can pay off my student loans in a couple years. And so that's where Job Talk, being this sort of seedling of an idea I had in the back of my mind for a long time, kind of came to the front. Like, hey, you know, you don't have to wait till you're 50 to do this. You know, you could do this now. So I gave my VP of HR, who was amazing and super supportive at Lindt, I gave her a 12-month notice, and basically was just like, you should know I'm going to do this. I'm going to set you up for success on my way out. But it was a great 3.5 years at Lindt, but I think I just really wanted to own my own time. And very good friend of ours, Brandon Thomas, who I love so much, he said to me, you know, understand, BT, he said, understand what you value. And that was for me, I think, that resonated with me on such a deep level, because it's hard, you know, you come from no money, you come from nothing, and then you make money, and you look around and like no one else in your family is making money, and there's that pressure of like, and I always talk to my clients about the shoulds, right? Like, don't shit on me.
I think, Krystal, you have to come back. There's a lot of topics here we can't cover in 45 minutes. You have to come back. We have to break this down. But that's a phenomenal one.
So it was just too tempting to stay put. And I was like, you know what? I'm never going to have this opportunity again. Like, I don't have kids. I had a house that I sold. You know, I am the anti-35-year-old, right? Not looking to be married, single, no kids, don't own a home. I work remote, I own my own time, and I've never been happier. Like, I have never had less in terms of what society says I should have right now, and I have never been happier. So,
dude, that's sick right there. First of all, shout out to Most Staff and NSBE.
Yes.
Shout out to BT as well. Thanks for giving us that background. We're definitely going to go off of a lot of stuff with that. But I want to get into a little bit by asking you, what does it feel like to work in a college settings? The pros and cons, some of the challenges you went through as an employee of the school, of a big university like UNH, and some of the racial injustice you probably saw while you were there as an employee of UNH.
For sure. It's a great question. I think higher ed in general is typically, you know, UNH specifically, right? And I worked in a private college, which was funded by its own tuition. It was a private, you could say it was a for-profit college, right? And it was funny because they were giving opportunities to people that wouldn't get into UNH or wouldn't get into certain other schools. And so I saw that benefit, but I also saw the downside of for-profit education, Right. Like, oh yeah, bring this student in who wants to be, a medical assisting student, but they have a background. So they're never going to pass a background check when they go to apply for the job at the hospital. And so I was like in this weird middleman sort of position where I was battling admissions all the time. Because I'm like, you shouldn't be enrolling someone that we truly can't help them get into their field because of things outside of our control. But we're doing that person a disservice. Like, that's not, like, ethically, it's hard when things start to go against the grain for you in that way.
You're giving them hope. And then
taking their money.
Right, and essentially, and then taking it away. That's very true.
Yeah.
So do people actually pay for that, or did the school cover some of that tuition usually?
No, that was like they were paying to come in and go through this program. So that was something where when I went to UNH, I was like, oh, this is better, right? Nonprofit, state-funded education, right? Oh my God. So things I didn't know coming into UNH. Phenomenal research institution, right? Absolutely loved it. The most global and diverse and inclusive work environment I've ever been in. I loved UNH for that reason. The staff members that I met that have just changed my life, some of my best friends I met at that job, and some of the students that I think have had such different lived experiences than me. And, I heard the term white privilege for the first time in my mid-20s at an OMSA, Office of Multicultural Student Affairs, which is now the Beauregard Center.
Yeah.
And I remember it was during an OMSA Say What, day, and it was those topic conversations, and I just remember that came up, and I was like, wait, what does that mean? And shout out to Selena Taylor, because Selena Taylor was the one that, who's just this amazing, amazing woman, and as a woman of color, and as a colleague and a friend, I was like, I need to know everything that there is to know about this, and I just dove into self-education. And so my time at UNH was incredibly personally and professionally rewarding in a lot of ways. But the downsides, the struggles, I think, working with a lot of international students, for example, who were going to need work visas and to get sponsored to go work at companies. And yet I felt like international students weren't really given the types of services or resources that they deserved in that setting.
Thank you.
Seriously, how many conversations do we have about sponsorship and all of these different things? And it's so hard, and I felt like that was a place that wasn't as well funded or supported, that needed more funding. So there were things that were tough. UNH didn't have, I think New Hampshire in the country is still 50th in terms of state funding for higher education and nonprofits in the state.
Yeah, I mean,
I know, by a long shot.
Yeah, you make such a great point there. I know so many of my friends who came to the U.S., on student visa, go to school, paid $40K a year to get that degree, and they get out, they can't get a job, they have to move back to their own countries for whatever reason, because they just, but you think about it, they've already put all that money to waste pretty much, right? Because they're not putting their degree into use. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so that's interesting, and I think a lot of time people don't even realize some of the subtle ways that things are disproportionately affecting certain communities and stuff. And I'm absolutely interested in you, and you kind of just mentioned this and opened that door to hear a little bit more about how, first of all, you went to that event and hearing about white privilege, and how did that translate to you into a journey of education, what prompted that for you. So obviously being here and wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt,
I'm gonna use this platform,
right? So I have to say, tell us a little bit more about that journey, what that was like, and then maybe we can bounce back off to the work that you do in general.
Yeah, for sure. And this shirt I bought from Black Love, which is on Instagram, which is a Black-owned business.
It's a great shirt.
BLKLUV. Yep.
Do you watch the docuseries?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Yeah. So just shout out to the Black-owned businesses out there.
I have no idea what they're talking about.
But I think for me, so again, I grew up in New Hampshire, right? And it's funny, and I think the first time I heard the term white privilege in that setting, and you also have to picture too, I'm in a room full of students that I care about deeply, faculty and staff that I work with closely. They were these, OMSA Say What was a very specific type of group discussion that would happen every month, in a different topic. And this was about like, I think it was like Miley Cyrus twerking or something. And someone said something about white privilege. I'm like, wait, what, but what? And they were like, yeah, but that's like your white privilege, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it was that first moment that I took that in and was like, I don't know enough about this. And I feel like it's a detriment to me being a support to these students in this room right now if I don't know about this, if I don't do this own self-introspection. And if I don't get good with that in myself, how am I going to have these conversations with them? Because you have to also understand too that I'm working with students who, in 1 second, I have a student in my office who's a student of color who's like, listen, I don't really want to work at a predominantly white organization. How do I find out if they're truly authentically diverse, or if it's just like a couple of their staff members or models on their website that's making them look diverse? And so these were conversations I was having in my everyday dialogue with students, or having a trans student come in who's like got an interview coming up and they are terrified because they don't know how to ask, where do you have gender neutral bathrooms, or am I going to be the only person who identifies with this space in this whole workplace? Having those conversations day in and day out, and yet here I was in this position where I was like, it was a huge blind spot, and so I just did a ton of self-education. The thing that UNH does well is like they provide a lot of training and workshops and resources, for discussions on microaggressions, and that just, I think it really blew my world open. And I think white people don't have to talk about race growing up. That is the privilege, and I think living in a predominantly white space, even though the people the majority of people that I care deeply about are not white, not cisgender, not straight, not from this country. And yet here we are with these blind spots still. So it's such a like real thing when you think of how are we educated, when the only Black history that you talk about in history class in high school is revolving around slavery, right? It's like, it boils down to the curriculum. It boils down to the comfort level that parents even have. I'm constantly saying like white parents need to talk to their white kids about this stuff, because that's where we really have to start the dialogue. And so I think it's something that I've just, even when I went to Lint, their leadership was white. I mean, it's a Swiss company, right? Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like they're coming from, like, let's be real. But the thing that killed me was when someone would say, I was trying to really diversify our leadership structure because our production lines were plenty diverse, right? You could look across the company and be like, oh yeah, there's diversity here. It's like, no. We're talking about global citizenship, but you could put a Italian guy, a French guy, and a German guy at a table and they're all white, So it's very different to talk about, are we truly and authentically trying to diversify the workplace?
That's very interesting.
So that was something I took a lot of initiative with, and I was a team of one. I owned all of recruiting for Lint US, and I hired about 80 people a year. And my goal was to constantly find different candidate pools that we could tap into. I could relocate talent, but then I found this amazing gentleman who's originally from Ghana but was living in Cincinnati working for P&G, and his wife was white. And so when we were talking about him making this move to New Hampshire from Cincinnati, as the recruiter, I have to step outside of my job for a minute and just be human and be like, help me understand how your wife feels, like with a mixed racial family. Like they have 3 children who would essentially be coming to our school systems. They would be coming into our community. How, do you want me to talk to your wife? Like these conversations were so much bigger than just me talking to a candidate and trying to check that box for diversity, at an organization, which everybody always focuses on the metrics. And I've always just had such a struggle with that, because it's not about going and recruiting, quote unquote, people of color to come work at your company. It's about fostering a culture that retains people of color in that organization. You know what I mean? Because it's really hard. And I think, friends of mine who have had that experience, unfortunately, of being the only person that has either looks like them, has their lived experience, shares that identity in an organization. And it doesn't take very long for them to be like, oh, well, now that the wool's been lifted over my eyes, this is where I work, So I think it's just important, I think, as a person who, like, my job is jobs, and I take that role of advocating for the candidate very seriously, same way that I took it as advocating for my students. And with organizations and with corporate, especially when you've got a bottom line to deal with, there's too many outside influences that come into that discussion around like, well, why are we not actually hiring more leaders of color in this organization? This is a trickle-down effect. So I was able to hire the first 3 people of color in leadership ever in that company's history in my time there. And they're like, and I love them all as individuals, and they're just so incredibly talented, but I'm also not going to say that their experience has probably been super easy. And that was something I had to be very honest with them. Like, listen, we're trying as an organization to fight these waves of change. Like, it's an uphill battle, and you're going to be one of the first people in this department to share this identity, and I need to know that you're okay with that. And if you're not, I get it. And like, not everybody is going to be up for that.
I think every office could use a recruiter.
I know, like you're talking, especially the first part when you're sharing your experience and how that you took that information and as in, I need to educate myself. Like, I was literally getting chills because when you originally introduced yourself, you mentioned, you know, you weren't coming from money and people around you didn't have it, right? And a lot of times, white people specifically feel like,
I'm
I'm poor, right?
Yeah,
I don't have no
exactly.
privilege. And so for you to take that in differently, I think that's extremely powerful. But then now you go on to talk about what it is like to hire people of color. And I know I 100% agree with you. They think you just need us in these spaces and the problem solved. So tell us a little bit about, you know, that experience, that journey for you, but also, so, and sometimes I think specifically what I want to ask, I'll say, rephrase that, is like, I know companies who sometimes are like, okay, I'm really trying, I really want to diversify my workforce, but I put this ad out there, no person of color is applying. Talk to them, please. Tell us what they're doing wrong, what they need to do, where they need to go to find us, and why they're struggling.
Yeah. If I had $1 for every time that someone said to me, well, we place the postings, we place these ads, but, you know, they don't apply. And I'm like, the theys need to stop, first of all. Like, even like in the approach, I'm like, okay, I see you where you are, right? And here's the thing, right? It's knowing that you're going to have to meet people where they are on this journey, because if someone has no context to this, this is where like intention does not dictate impact, right? You could be extremely well intended by placing that ad, or, you know, posting on Handshake and going to the HBCUs and trying to attract, you know, new grads of color or something like that. It is a totally different thing and I think when companies reach out to me now, because I do corporate consulting and I work mostly with my one-on-one job seekers, but I do work with organizations, and one of the questions that they always ask is like, well, where can we post these ads so that we get better quality, you know, people of color involved? And I'm just like, your environment is completely like unhospitable for like, I don't even want you to hire me to do this when you have work to do prior to this is the step 2. This is not step 1. You know, you have to be creating a very welcoming and inclusive culture, and like an authentically inclusive culture. And I think that's where you know, people are like, oh, well, you know, we're putting our money where our mouth is. We bought this system that removes the names off resumes. And I'm like, okay, well, how much money have you spent on implicit bias training for your managers? Because I can tell you right now, some system might look good to your stakeholders, and this is like a line or a buzz line that you can have in an interview in a paper or something that shows how you're supporting the cause. But like, are you actually having these tough conversations with people in your organization?
That's very important.
Because that was something that I just have found. Again, like, if someone isn't comfortable and they haven't done that self-introspection and they haven't gone on that journey themselves, and like, even at the base of acknowledging their own privilege, how are they going to have these conversations with people that are in higher ranking positions than them in their organization? How are they going to talk to their peers about this? Everybody wants to make this political. It's not political. It's social. Right. This is a human. Yeah, like, so it's just, I think there's a lot of that work to be done. And if you're not willing to invest in that work, I'm not going to give you the frosting off the cake. Like, I'm not going to just carry you over the finish line so that you can make a couple diversity hires this year and feel like you're doing people, you know, you're doing your part.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Those people are going to be gone in 6 months. Like,
exactly.
let's be real, you know.
So you've already alluded to it, Job Talk.
Mm-hmm.
So you recently created this platform. Tell the audience a little bit about what Job Talk is, where you can be found, to reach out to and collaborate and things of that nature.
Yeah, so jobtalkllc.com is the site. JobTalk it's a career counseling practice, right? So I'm not a placement agency. I've been there, done that, right? I worked in staffing. This is sort of like job therapy meets 20 questions meets let's build a roadmap, right? So some of my clients will come to me and they'll say, I just don't know what I want to do anymore. I've been doing this for 5 years, 10 years, 5 weeks, who knows? Like my clients span the gamut of experience, but it's that feeling of I don't know what I don't know. I've been in a bubble, right? Or I got my degree in XYZ and that's what I've been doing for 10 years, but now I don't want to do that anymore. What else exists? And so for a lot of clients, it really is that exploratory process. Yeah. And then for other clients, they'll come in, they're kind of more like process driven. So they'll say, listen, I know what I want to do, but it's been 10 years since I've job hunted. I just don't even know how to navigate the landscape of this job market, or COVID has changed things. How do I stand out in the market? Because right now it's a volume game. And my Instagram handle, actually, it's jobtalk.llc. I put up a lot of like quick tips on there, a lot of video clips, and try to like give people market updates of where we are and what we're kind of seeing. The way that I've been describing this COVID market, it's like a marathon, but the finish line keeps changing, and like
it's farther and farther
and you already
away.
got cramps, and there's no water in sight, and it's like you have to still keep going, and that emotional resilience is just paramount. And so it's really, really hard right now for people. And so I think a lot of people have reached out to me just because they need that resume revamped. They need help with LinkedIn. So many people will say, I have a LinkedIn profile, but like, what is it really doing for me? Or I don't really know how to make this work for me. And that is such a game-changing resource when you know how to leverage it. And most people don't even know how it works. They think it's like Facebook for your professional life. Yes, right?
I think I need to sign up for your services.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I'm on LinkedIn, but I have no idea why I'm on LinkedIn.
So there you
I don't
go.
use it.
Yep.
It's time to learn.
Yep.
Right. I have Krystal to teach me, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. And affordability, like I really try to keep transparency is huge to me, right? I started this practice because I was sick of seeing resources that were way too expensive. People making a mortgage payment on a resume revamp, which is crazy, like bananas to me. And so I always said, if I open this practice, I'm going to figure out what do I need to make? What do I need personally to like keep my lights on and live my life? But also, how can I make this as affordable as possible for people that need it? Because both of my parents would have needed this.
Yeah.
Like both of my parents struggled with employment. Like my parents split when I was 3, so I saw both of them as single parents trying to navigate the world of work. My dad had 3 jobs all the time. You know what I mean? So it was just like, I wish that there were resources that they could have tapped into. And I think so many people just assume that this stuff is super expensive and, you know, but I try to hold like free monthly workshops. You can always find that stuff under my events tab on my website. I've got a blog tab, which is a ton of free advice. Everything I'd say to you in person about resumes, cover letters, the whole nine. Yeah.
So here's what worries me, right? The class of 2020 graduated, and there's a ton of young kids who are looking for jobs. As a recruiter, someone who's been in this space, what's your recommendation to them? Because I don't know how they're surviving this world.
I think that this is going to become a part of their career story. Mm-hmm. You know?
Journey.
Yeah, this is just, I mean, because I remember being in journalism, which if you think about it, newspapers were like catching on fire as a medium. You know, when I was graduating, everything was going digital. And even now they struggle, right? But the thing is I had bartending. I made more money bartending my first year out of college than I did my first degreed position. Like that, and I tell my students that all the time, like you are going to have to make really tough decisions when it comes to money in your career. Sure. But I think with this new graduating class, they don't even have that. Like restaurants are not an option right now. That is not the same thing. So actually a blog I put on my site a couple months ago was just, I am begging recruiters to be even more empathetic to these new grads that are coming out, and you know, to the corporate recruiters that, you know, have all these different positions that they're going to be hiring for probably in Q3 and Q4 this year if they had to put them on pause, you know, earlier in the year or whatever. Can you downgrade one of those positions to an entry-level role? Can you take on a postgraduate intern? Can you, you know, I really think that it's the hiring space that needs to kind of close the gap on this. I don't think that the onus of this problem has to be put on the shoulders of new grads. They didn't do anything wrong. They didn't deserve this. I'd say the same thing about anybody that's been furloughed or laid off, through this. And the nice thing is that in all of the recruiters and talent acquisition managers that I talk to on a regular basis, and friends of mine that are still in the field, they'll tell you that it is a much more empathetic market right now because they know there's some amazing talent on the market at no fault of their own.
So we're talking about new grads, and obviously they have to be on the job market. So I think that's a good leeway in transition into any resume tips, myth practices. What does that look like? What are we doing wrong on our resumes? How do we catch people's attention with it? Or anything else, any advice that you generally give to any clients around resume building?
Sure. I mean, you mentioned myths. Oh my God. The whole your resume's got to be one page thing. Never in my career have I made a hiring decision based off the length of someone's resume. And that is something I hear constantly. And here's the thing, right? If you're a new grad, you probably don't have enough experience to span a second page. It is what it is. If you've done a ton of internships and you've had summer jobs, I want to see that stuff. So as a recruiter, why am I going to care if it's 2 pages? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And you know what? The people that spread this nonsense on LinkedIn or anyone that can type gets an opinion now, right, on this stuff. I implore people.
Technology era, social media time.
I teach a college to career how to stand out in today's job market class at UNH still to the business students. Yeah, and I tell my students all the time, please be critical thinkers during this stuff. When you see advice doled out, please go to that person's LinkedIn page. Are they a recruiter? Are they an HR manager? Have they ever been in this type of a position? If the answer is no, take that with a grain of salt, because if you haven't been in the seat, it's the same reason why when I was a director of career services, I basically had begged my executive director, please make it so that 50% of the hires we make, I can pull directly from corporate. I can pull directly from the market. There's a lot of people that work in higher ed their whole career. We need them. However, their experience is so limited in this space. And you know what? If a student comes in to talk to you, how many conversations did we have where I was let me tell you about what this is really like in the market, If you can't source that, you have no credibility with those students and they won't come to you. If they can get the same advice from Google that they can get from you in that, right. What? I'm just going to do that then. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that there is definitely this, the myth busting has been constant. And anytime I hear BS like that, I always try to call it out. So no, your resume does not need to be one page.
That's a good one. Yeah. That's a really good one because we really go extra length. I mean, I do to kind of stretch the page marks and everything to kind of make sure things fit in interestingly. That's
9.5 font. I'm you're killing me now. Now I got to put on my glasses just to retrieve it.
Right. But as a student, if you put yourself in a student's shoes right now, how do you really play with that? Because the thing, everyone is aware of the one-page resume, and if you hear you don't have to really do that, how are you supposed to really play that out when you have so much experience that you need the employer to know about?
I think that this really boils down to and this goes for COVID, this goes for just in general, right? Something that I'm constantly saying is, if I'm recruiting for a position, I got 300 candidates per job. That's average. If even 10% of them are super qualified, that's still 30 people that you're up against that maybe have better experience than you, more experience than you, whatever. So the person who usually gets the job is so rarely the best candidate for a million different reasons. It's usually just a great candidate that knew how to stand out from all the other great candidates, because there always will be. So your job as the job seeker is to find those ways of standing out. And you have so many tools at your fingertips right now that past generations did not, right? Something I constantly tell people, create a video cover letter, right? Especially for my international students or for people that feel like there's a barrier, or I had someone recently who English was their second language, and they're I always just feel people think that based on my name, and this is where implicit bias comes in too with resumes, right? I used to have a lot of Chinese students at UNH who would change their name on their resume from their name to Sherry, Shannon, Marcy, all of these Americanized names, and they're not stupid. They know what's going on. But it's you know what? If you're assuming there's going to be a bias, how can we mitigate that? create a video cover letter, link that thing to your resume, or put a line up on your resume that drives that traffic over to your LinkedIn profile where you can have more media and talk to me. Tell me your story. What are you all about? Why should I hire you? Right? This is the stuff that makes someone stand out.
It's the new age right there.
Yeah, think outside the box. Like, especially during something like COVID, there are no rules anymore. Get creative, be resourceful, think outside the box. Like, this is, because at the end of the day, who do I want to hire? I want to hire someone who's proactive, who's creative, who knows how to make things happen, like, who's taking the initiative. Right. That's how you're going to stand out in the volume.
That's a really good one. But and then you mentioned implicit bias with resumes. I think and Chinese students, particularly they've done that in different ways, just changing their names when they come here. And there've been a lot of Hispanics who have gone to giving their kids white sounding names, because we know that data proves that Black or minority sounding names usually get
36%.
30.
Yep. White people are 36%. The research over the last 25 years shows that white people are 36% more likely to get that call over people of color based on the resume.
So so your recommendation is still be you, but like, how do you kind of merge those two things, right? Like, because you kind of want to be considered still, like you want that access in, especially for a lot of people of color. You don't know who to call to, be that extra reference within the organization. You don't have that person that would let just open the door for you. So what's your advice to people in that setting, and how do you think they should navigate that?
And to piggyback off of that, once you answer that question, kind of talk about a little bit the importance of internships for students in college currently, because I feel like creating that connection while you're in college could also help you battle this once you get out, which you taught me, but
Yeah. All great questions. So, oh God, let's see where to start. I think that there is definitely that tightrope walk of, I want to be my authentic self. I want to be hired authentic. I don't want to have to code switch every time I go into a different interview or conversation with someone in this company. And the nice thing is that prior to COVID, it was very much a candidate's market. And I would see a lot more people of color, first-gen students, LGBTQ community members who were feeling much more comfortable going into those interviews and having that conversation, because companies had to get on it. Companies were fighting for talent. It was such a different market for like the last 6 or 7 years. Okay. And so what's nice is that I think we've started to move or like turn this, and it's a sea tanker. It takes time, right? But like we're moving this ship in a way where I'm hoping that people don't feel the need to change their name, change their, flip things around. But I think we also have to understand too, like, let's boil that down. What do they feel is the bias, right? I've had certain students say, I feel like someone's going to see my name and assume that my English is really broken. Okay, make that video cover letter. Prove to them it's not. Like let's jump the barrier immediately. I also have, I've talked to so many people who are like, I had a gap on my resume because I had kids. I took a couple years off, and I think, that's something, especially for women, that like we very much, men don't have to deal with this as much. Like now it's so much more talked about in organizations. HubSpot, which is such a great organization. Katie Burke is their chief people officer, and she always does such a great job putting out a lot of content on how they're helping to change the narrative over, what does it mean to have a family and work full time? What does it mean to, we're not going to judge you for your gaps. We're going to judge you based on your accomplishments and what we feel like you could bring to our team. That's the pressure that I'm hoping is now put on other companies, because we have to stop perpetuating bad behavior. We have to stop supporting that bad behavior and rewarding those companies that do this stuff. And that's where I feel like we can really start focusing on the HubSpots of the world. Bottom Line Technology is another great one. There's so many organizations that are just standing in it. Like, you know what? Wear what you want. Dress how you want. Show your tattoos. Let us know your pronouns. Like, they're the ones that I think are going to really reap the benefits of that talent swing, because it's been such a candidate's market, Right. People want to work in those organizations. The good old boys clubs. Look at the Goldman Sachs and the Liberty Mutuals and the Morgan Stanleys. Yeah, you can wear jeans there now sometimes. Really? Like, they've had to adjust because we put that pressure on them. young people have that opportunity. Candidates have that opportunity. People vote with their dollars, but they also vote with those applications too.
That's a good one.
No, that's a good one because you're alluding to something really good there. A lot of companies have those like 1 day a week where you can just dress as casual as you'd like to. I saw a lot of that John Hancock, which you also helped me get a job, which was sweet. But I guess I want to transition this to what is your message as a recruiter with respect to what you're doing with Job Talk and all that to all the young students again, because I think we need to speak to the youth, and they are really in a time where things are really difficult for them.
Yeah.
Can you speak to them directly and kind of like tell them some steps they need to take in order to be successful with the job market, the new job market, which you've already alluded to, but kind of like point it out a little more so they can get it.
You mentioned internships, and that's something that I can't stress enough. I think there's still so many, you can't depend on your school to help you get an internship, and that's such a big thing. And I think people think, the schools are like, oh, well, we have Handshake and we have these systems and you can do this. And it's like, I worked in career services, like I know, right? But I also know that the majority of majors don't have internships required as part of their programming because it's a lot of paperwork. So it's like, how are we going to start encouraging students who maybe can't afford to give up that job to do a free internship, right? How are we going to help the student that doesn't have money to own a car to get an internship that's not on a bus line or not, connected to public transportation? Like, these are the issues. These are the challenges, especially when you become get more rural with the location.
It's kind of crazy. Like, you're mentioning this, but it's insane that even if you're qualified, even if you're going to college, there's still this like economic, racial, whatever gap within access, right? Like, and obviously that's what got you to this journey of starting this organization, to make it first of all affordable, because there's a basic line understanding that there are people who can't afford some of these services who really do need them. But I think that's extremely interesting to see that even within a space where you really just should be qualified and get it, there's still all these other external issues. To me, I feel like it says a lot about society and the work we have to do as a whole to make sure that everybody has equal access to these things. So that's definitely a phenomenal advice.
Yeah. I would just end it by saying, again, think outside the box. Like, so especially for students, how can you just do informational interviews? You don't even have to look at all the internships that got canceled right now because of COVID, right? You get these poor students that are like, well, so much for hustling for 4 years to get that great internship, and now I can't do it. Exactly. Okay, if a company canceled your internship on you, hit that company back, talk to that recruiter and be like, you know what, since I can't come and intern, can you line me up with 5 people in your organization that I can do informational interviews with over Zoom? And and record those so that you can use them and listen to them back and share them with friends. Help build up your community of other people that are in this. So if you figure you and your friends all kind of get, between 2 and 5 informational interviews, and then you're sharing them with each other.
Right.
Think of the knowledge share that's happening there, the ripple effect of that. Because people they don't know what they don't know. The whole point of an internship is to give someone the exposure, right? So it's like, if you were going for a sales internship or a marketing internship, okay, cool. Give me 5 people in those departments that do different subsets of those jobs, and let me informationally interview them so that I can hear and learn at least a little bit about these things. But also think of the relationships that you're making in those moments. Think of the contacts that you're growing. The other thing I would tell students is, even part-time jobs, right? Everybody puts this spotlight on internships. I have met students that had phenomenal part-time jobs that were actually more related to their field than the internship that they were going to that was going to be free. And I'm like, forget the internship, keep the job. Ask for more hours at your job, right? And I think it's just, we have to step back from what we're told are all these rules. You get an internship, this is what you do, and step back and look at it critically. Ask yourself, where are you going to get the most exposure? Where are you able to go and actually get the answers to these questions that you have really answered? I've known plenty of people that have done internships and didn't learn a thing. So,
that is
we do it coffee.
That's a fact.
In those offices. So that's definitely a phenomenal advice. Would you say anything to, because there's, with this COVID too, people are home and online platform is a thing. Like if you have a hobby, would you give any advice to anybody around that too? Like learning to be an entrepreneur, like excelling in that, like getting better at what you already do part-time and putting that out there, or maybe better understanding. Like entrepreneurship, I think, is also a good thing in this moment, something that you can do at least for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I would say, I would definitely check out the book, The Gig Economy by Diane Mulcahy. She's actually Boston-based. She teaches this as a class at Babson. She's the one that interviewed me for that Forbes article.
Oh, really?
She does a whole blog on women in the gig economy. And so this is something where it's like, if you have a side hustle, to your point, like, okay, how can I turn this into something? You know, look at all the people making masks right now.
Right.
Because they knew how to sew. I was like, I don't even know how to sew. I'm going to pay someone to give me a mask. Like, so you think of, I always tell people, one of the foundations of career counseling is like, people always say, oh, well, people just want to talk to me about what I'm passionate about. Here's passion, right? Here's what you're good at. This is the job. Like, those two things have to intersect. You could be passionate about something till you're blue in the face. If no one's going to pay you to do that for them, that is not a job.
It's true.
So think of the marketable skills that you have that somebody would pay for. Think of the website design. Oh my God, the amount of people that, app development and all of that. So absolutely, turn that all into revenue if you can.
Critical thinking is huge. Krystal, this has been awesome. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We really appreciate you.
This is great. We have to bring you back, Krystal.
Anytime.
There are tons
For sure.
of topics
Anytime.
you touched on that would be great to talk about, especially the criminal justice system and a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Krystal Hicks.
Yeah. Do you have any last word before we close it
Anything
out?
else? Any closing thoughts?
No, I'm an equal opportunity connector on LinkedIn. Definitely, shoot me a connection on LinkedIn, and jobtalkllc.com if anybody wants more info.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe down below or to the left or right.
And make sure you check her out, because obviously there's a lot of good content, a lot of blog posts, and a lot of information you can get if you're in the job market and you need someone to talk to.
We'll learn.
Krystal is the person for that.
Krystal, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We
This was great.
appreciate it. This was great.